So it is, there's some seats over here, so, and there's 4 up here. And there's a couple back there, and I'm sure. Oh, and we're recording this meeting, so please be careful what you say. Well, whatever. So I'm starting it a little early because, as you can see, we have a full house tonight. Everybody's got their time limit. I know they will all stick with their time limit. However, of course, is there a question and answer period? Yeah, there'll be a question and answer period. So you better talk to them. And what I'm going to do, and of course, somebody over here is going to give me a dirty look, but what I'd like to do is, that's why I'm starting a little early, I'd like to everybody give, in a couple of seconds, who you are, what company you work for. That's it, no long speeches, and no resumes. These gentlemen will identify themselves, so we'll start over here.
My name is Nora Ricks, and I'm with Doug Shear. I'm Regina Shear, the consultant corporation.
As you can see, Doug brought his own audience. Wait, is that microphone live? Yeah. Rick, could you, Rich, could you get it, and we'll just pass it around. Is there an engineer in the house? Obviously, we don't have, well, there is an audio engineer. Is it working? Okay.
Don't blow into it, right? Jordan Bizel, self-represented. It's the first time meeting.
Thank you very much. Richard Marcus Productions.
Mark Foreman, SMTPENY photographer, and Mark Foreman Productions.
Don Morgan, Miranda.
John Dannenbaum, Miranda. Sales.
Joe LaGrasso, Miranda.
Tim Dwight, Company 3.
Michael Temmer.
Ileana Yonita from Mastic.
Vasil Leftero, founder and CEO, Playbox Technology.
Kathy Miller with Playbox.
Dave Russin with Playbox.
Mark Gray with Archimedia.
Mike Brusick, Intralinks.
Dan Moran, Clarence Digital.
Stephen Conman, Northrop Grumman Corporation.
Pete Huffman from Bally's Atlantic City.
Fred Huffman, Huffman Technical Services.
Matthew Brennisholtz from Insight Media.
Rich Dorpy, Viacom.
William Laziza, CUNY TV.
Jim O'Brien from Avico.
John Scheich from Snell.
Steve Paintner, still with entertaining offers.
I've heard of that company. I used to work for them.
Herb Oland, New York Section, Secretary Treasurer.
John Turner, Turner Engineering.
Charles Turner, Turner Engineering.
Tom Michaels, Cognizant.
Chuck Deal, Everts.
Charles Kerman, CBS.
Bill Miller, consultant and New York Region Governor of SMTPENY.
Sarah Cutterly, Miranda and Western Region Governor for SMTPENY.
John Furter, CBS, New York Region Governor, SMPTE.
You can't sit in that row unless you're a governor, just remember that.
Sol Spicer, CUNY TV.
Nick DeLello, Sony Professional Solutions.
Thomas Covey, Sony Professional Solutions.
Dion LeCointe, Sony Professional Solutions.
Marvin Sharon, G&G Technologies.
You're not with Sony anymore? Oh, I thought you were Sony, Marvin. Sorry.
Mike O'Connell, Pixel Power.
Eric Drucker with Tiffin.
Terry Barnum, Snell.
Burt Young with Snell.
Dave Wallace, HBO.
Tom O'Hanlon, Everts.
Warren Singer, Video Technology Resources.
Mike Ricker, consultant, also open to staff opportunities. I got cards, how about you?
Shalisa Morgan, a student at BMCC.
Denisha Johnson, student at BMCC.
William Dean, student, BMCC.
Andrew Finkel, Able Cine.
CJ Leonard, CBS Local.
David Bialik, CBS Local.
Bob Gross, WPIX TV.
Harold Borth, Fox Television, retired.
Carl Cavagnolo, Ross.
John Byler, HBO.
Rob Fox, Roden Schwartz.
Tony Fox, Roden Schwartz.
Ken Metcalf, Harris Broadcast.
Dave Martin, Temple University Television.
Bernice Herskovitz, New York 1.
Phil Cianci, AMC Networks.
Ian McSpadden, Meredith Local Media Group.
Pete Santorella, Everts.
Raul Marquez, Evers Microsystems.
Jeff Parker, Snow.
Steve B., freelance and still seeking offers.
Bruce Fulmer, ABC.
Jeff Cohen, Archimedia.
Tom Morrow, Harris Broadcast.
John Circoni, I'm available.
Jim Noonan, Snell.
Did we miss anybody? By the sound of it, I think we should have bring your resume meeting one night. Yeah. You never know where you're going to be tomorrow. Okay, so we do have an audio guy in the house. Thank you. So, all right. So welcome. I'm Ray Blumenthal. I'm the section chair for New York. A quick little thing. I was over in London at a broadcast show there. I met with my counterpart. SMT has a section in England, all of England, over 300 members. We've made a deal so anybody that's English has dual membership. All right, so I'm the first one. So anyway, all right. So good evening. Welcome to the our meeting, Channel in a Box World, and Doug Shear, standing over here, very nervous, put this whole thing together. Doug, and by the way, Doug and I go back, God, longer than we want to think. When he was with JVC, and I was with a company that's out of business now. Most companies are that I was with. Doug is CEO and Chief Analyst for DIS. Guess what that stands for? A consulting corporation. He's been doing market research for the last 32 years, and the firm has served more than 1,600 clients. This is an ad by him, by the way. He had to pay for it. Since 1982. With both syndicated and custom studios. He publishes, pardon? Sorry. Now you can see the tie-in. They published Channel in a Box World 2013, so now you see what the tie-in is. He does know something about it. And he publishes other publications. Doug's writing appears in over 80 countries, in various languages. Do you write all those languages? No, oh, okay. And he's been a contributor to the IBC Daily News for more than 30 years. He was also a past chair of this section, as also a manager, secretary, treasurer, a few other things. We also send him out for lunch. And he's currently on the board, too, as a non-elected manager. I'm going to turn the meeting over to him because I think you're tired of listening to me now. But don't forget, I do have the pictures of my grandchild if you want to see them anytime. Oh, and by the way, we are planning a meeting for next month, even though there's NAB. The post-NAB meeting is in May, which is at HBO. You'll see it on the website. But we're thinking of doing a meeting later in the month on new dimensions in cinematography and Viacom. Oh yeah. Thank you for reminding me. We have a couple of subsections, one in Connecticut and one starting off in Long Island. And we did this last year. For people living in those areas, they can go to, in this particular case, Viacom, if you're on Long Island. And in Connecticut, we did it at ESPN and at one of the dealers there. We'll get the information. And you can, HB Communications, were they going to do it this year? We don't, all right. Well, it was HB Communications last year. And you can participate and watch in real time, streaming video, where you can, two-way video where you can watch the meeting. I think we had a total of about 35 people. And yes, and ask questions. Bi-directional. I should have these two talking. It's bi-directional. So if you go there, because there's a lot of people that are members of the section but can't come into the city for every single meeting, this would be a way of doing it. It will be on our website. There will be a notice of how to sign up for the meetings, whether you're coming live or you're going to go to one of those locations. We're also investigating, for those few people that live in New Jersey, a subsection in Jersey, which we'll get into in the next couple of months. And I think that's enough for me now, so I'll turn it over to Doug.
Well, I'd like to start by thanking Ray, as well as Lisa Curley, who's in the back on the camera, of CBS Engineering, and Tim Dwight, who held my hand through the whole process of organizing this, took many months, and very much to CBS for their generosity. I'd also like to thank our presenters from Everts, Grass Valley, Harmonic, Harris, Miranda, Playbox, and Snell. At least for tonight, those are the names. I can't say, what they'll be as of NAB, but tonight I've gathered these 7 here because they're leading providers of what people call channel-in-a-box solutions. I say call because while there are great similarities between all of these systems, there are also interesting dissimilarities. Or maybe we'd call it, special sauce. There are certain things about each system which are unique, and I think that's partly what will be revealed tonight as we see what I trust will be 10-minute PowerPoint presentations that each of them will do. Then we're going to go to a panel format for which I have prepared some questions. And then finally, I'm asking you to hold your questions until the question and answer period after the panel, at which time I'd like you to, we may pass the mic, or you can come up to the mic at the mic stand, tell us your name again and your affiliation before you state your question. DIS has been tracking servers for about 20 years. So we're old hands at tracking server applications, at tracking brand shares, tracking all kinds of tech trends in servers over that period of time. And we've also been looking at servers within a digital cinematography study because it's important there. We've been looking at servers in sports, and we even had one version. We had a medical study where we looked at servers within that medical market. So you could say we're interested in servers. 2 years ago, we put together a study which we've now done twice called Channel in a Box World, the next edition of which is in the fall. And that's the entirety of my commercial. So now I'd like to move on to the presenters, and we're doing this in alphabetical order, starting with Everts. So let me just introduce Dan Turo, who is Senior Director, Product Development at Everts Microsystems. Dan has over 20 years of experience in both the broadcast and consumer video markets. At Everts, Dan is responsible for their modular infrastructure, playout, and automation product offerings. Everts is a Canada-based equipment provider to the television broadcast industry. The company designs, manufactures, and distributes video and audio infrastructure equipment for the production, post-production, broadcast, and telecommunication markets. It derives its revenues from the sale of hardware and software solutions, including related services, training, and commissions. And now, Dan.
Is that full screen? No. I know I have more than 10 minutes of presentation, so I'll try and shorten some of the slides up. But so when we have to present on channel in a box, I kind of thought about that and kind of went, channel in a box. Those are a lot of important words in a very short space. So the first one, channel. What is a channel today? How do we define a channel? We've got our traditional playout, which is linear or channel in a box, or I actually call it integrated playout, because I don't think there is a channel in a box, and we'll get to that later on. But we also have new distribution mechanisms. We've got VOD, we've got web, we've got OTT, we've got all kinds of stuff out there. And if you look at it in terms of what's going on in the market, in terms of the internet, 50% of the traffic in peak times is based on real-time video, whether it be iTunes or YouTube, 30% Netflix, and 11% from YouTube. So ton of data going out there over the internet. It's mostly video. We're not all sitting at our computers, we're also sitting on our phones. And the amount of mobile data is contributing exponentially to that kind of trend. So this is something from Cisco in terms of the growth of mobile data. It's growing at two times per year at about 92% CAGR. So it's ramping up quite rapidly. And about 2/3 of that data in 2015 is going to be real-time video type stuff. So this is really, really important. People are watching TV where they want, when they want, how they want. In terms of this TV Everywhere initiative, lots of guys are doing it. Rogers, Comcast on the cable side, IPTV is TELUS, AT&T, others. Direct Home, Direct TV, Bell Express View. From the broadcaster side, ABC, CBS, NBC, Univision, people are going down that road as well. The advantages are really you get a new source of revenue from these subscriptions. You leverage your existing content into new mechanisms. You can actually get directed and targeted advertising in these platforms as well. And there's more social interaction with a wider audience, which is just good for the brand. The disadvantages, it's expected by the consumer. Everybody just wants video everywhere. Nobody wants to pay for it. That's a big problem, right? That means we've got to manage our capital expenditures really, really carefully. And there's very cost-effective OTT encoders and stat muxes and all that kind of stuff. We've got to leverage our existing infrastructure, but at the same time, reduce our operational expenditures. So a channel just isn't a linear channel. The definition is changing. So to take advantage of those things, really what you need is you need a comprehensive media asset management system to efficiently take care of your linear channels, your channel in a box, and your nonlinear channels as well. Really, really important. And in the title of the presentation, you put workflow. Workflow is a critical portion of how you actually define what you do with the channel. So for those of you who aren't familiar with a media asset management system, it's getting the right content at the right place at the right time and doing it efficiently for your linear channels and your nonlinear channels. So use your metadata, get your scalability up, and your operational expenditures down. That's really the goal of the media asset management system. You define basically a digital video factory where you have a workflow that is engineered and prioritized based on what operators want to do, and you define separable and orthogonal tasks. So you capture your metadata as you go through, and you push that metadata gathering process way upstream so you can actually eliminate the redundant tasks, automate the manual ones, collect the metadata that you really need, so you can actually go from a one to many. You get your data, you get your content once, you get your metadata once, you drive your linear channel and your nonlinear channels, but also your nonlinear ones. So just in terms of a traditional workflow, you've got ingest, you've got auto QC, you've got markup, you've got transcoding that goes to your central store and to your integrated playout server, whatever that would be. But at the same time, if you get your metadata right, you can take advantage of that and also automate the process of getting to your nonlinear channels as well, whether it be VOD, web, whatever it is. You can automate the conforming process, the transcoding process, and the publishing process. At the same time, there's a really big trend in the market right now. Those processes used to be very serial in terms of getting to those alternate channels. There's a big drive in the market right now to going to a massively parallel, accelerated, faster than real-time transcoding process to get your content out to your other channels. So that's an important point. The media asset management system is a really important channel in a portion of a channel in a box, but you think about, okay, a box. Is it really a channel in a box? Well, let's look at the things we actually deal with when we're designing a system. We look at our multi-viewer. We look at our monitoring. We look at the router. We look at how we're actually going to visualize things, how we're going to handle compression. And really, you end up with three kind of main concepts that you have to look at: your network management, your automation in your MAM, and your operational control surfaces, because there is no way you're going to get that all into one spot. So in truly, it's our belief, in a truly scalable enterprise class system design, there is no channel in a box. You're going to have a central storage solution. You're going to have an ingest server, or you're going to have a media asset management system. So a channel in a box is maybe a name that we need to think about. I personally call it integrated playout, because there's more than one thing when you put a channel together. So what we do when we actually look at these things, forget all the infrastructure and the technical stuff and all that kind of stuff below. We really focus on a three-screen approach to how we put these systems together. Put in front of the operator 3 screens that will allow them to handle multi-channel playout. So one of them is your network management system based on SMTPENY. Let's say another one is your media asset management and your automation system. And the third one is an operational control surface for manual stuff. And because there are so many things that you probably need to get in there, we've really gone to a model that it's almost an iPad for broadcast, a very configurable touchscreen-based surface so you can get all the things that you need into that one particular spot. Once you kind of get those 3 screens in place, yeah, this is where the scalability comes in. Your ingest channels, you can add them in as you have your central store, and you add in your integrated playout boxes as you go. But what's in that integrated playout box? It's all that stuff that we had in the past. Your logo insertion, your captions insertion, your AFD processing, all your Nielsen stuff, all that stuff, that doesn't exist anymore. That's why I say it's an integrated playout solution, because really today, that is inside a single box. Right? That's where the channel in a box concept comes from. And you get all your server ports, you get your graphics and branding, you get your switching in there as well. So all that stuff that you really traditionally had downstream of the server port is in fact integrated in, so you get your density up and your scalability up as well. And you add in things that we need to deal with these days, things like loudness management. You got to deal with that. That's got to be integrated in. You don't want another box downstream of your server port to handle that kind of stuff. And all your advanced graphics and branding is integrated in there as well. So that's the present. The future, it's IP. There's IP in, there's IP out, and there's a massive, massive drive towards IP. Why is that? This is actually a really neat graph. There's a wave, and then a continuous wave of IP technologies coming out. Today, most of the stuff that's shipping out there is 10 gig. Within about 2 years, it's going to be 40 gig, and probably in about 3 years, the majority of stuff is going to be running at 100 gig. So taking advantage of that is really, really important. And this is interesting for me personally. In one of my previous lives, I built and made SDI chips. If the price point of a 10 gig interface existed 10 years ago, SDI would not be here. It's just changed so much. And the prices continue to come down. And within about a year, the price of a 10 gig interface is going to be about 10%, within about 10% of a 1 gig interface. So all this 1 gig, 10 gig, 100 gig stuff, high density encoding and decoding, and high bandwidth IP switching is really driving things into a rapid growth mode for the data center type approach. Putting your channel in a box or your integrated playout solution in the data center is now viable. There's a massive movement towards video services. You don't have to think about a linear stream anymore. You can think about video services once you get into the IP domain. And with that comes really a software-defined video network as a critical portion of making the IP world work in the channel in a box world. So in our traditional approach, yeah, we do have the linear, we think left to right. We have our ingest, we have our router, we have our playout server, and then our downstream stuff, and a separated control network for the broadcast stuff. When you go into the IP domain, including their playout services, you really start to think about an IP-based switch with video services coming in and going out. And those services can be anywhere you want. They can be located in your main facility, or they can be located in the data center. It gives you a lot of flexibility to put the technologies you want where it's most optimal from an operations standpoint. That's how we would look for an IP-based playout solution. You've got the thing that you traditionally think, but it's more services based. You've got your line inputs with your line records. You've got your ingest server. You've got your storage, your playout servers, your multi-viewer. All that stuff could be distributed wherever you want, but using an IP backbone for the switching. The key thing on this, when you go IP, key concern is operations shouldn't know the difference. They shouldn't care about what technology is underneath. It's making sure that the control panels they're using look like they do for traditional video things today. When it comes to routing, it's got to be deterministic. You can't tolerate any contention or large latencies in the system. And it's got to be simple to use and maintain. And that's where one of these big IP-based switches comes into play. An EXE-based type switch with 2,304 10-gig ports. Now, on each 10-gig port, there are 6 video signals. So you're looking at 12,000 by 12,040 RU. You've got the IP backbone that's completely non-blocking with a separate control plane and all the things that we need in our infrastructure. Front-to-back cooling, front accessible type redundant controllers, all the things that you need and want in a high availability system. But it takes away a lot of the constraints we used to have in terms of, I got to count the number of router ports. You got 12,000 in, 12,000 out in 40 RU. It changes the IP world and how you can actually play with a channel in a box. Sorry about that. Control mechanism. Again, it looks like what you would traditionally use in a broadcast facility. You're defining IP multicasters and switches, but you're using a traditional control system with it. So just to summarize it up, very tight integration with the media asset management system is critical for a playout solution, whether it be linear or nonlinear. You've got to have the heavy integration, taking all those things that are downstream of the server port and sucking them in. You've got to have, because I don't think there is one box that does everything, a proper network management system and leverage the growth in IP. It's here, it's growing, it's not going to stop.
Thank you.
If you have an empty seat next to you, please raise your hand. There's a bunch of people who want to pass.
Sam Peterson is Director of Product Management Playout at Grass Valley. Peterson is a longtime staff member of Grass and was previously at Tektronix in the 1990s. Grass Valley is changing the way live television is made and delivered. Recognized with 18 Emmy Awards for technology innovation, Grass Valley's product portfolio, from image acquisition to playout, offers a complete end-to-end workflow of flexible, forward-thinking solutions which enable broadcasters and content owners to build multi-screen, multi-platform futures. Sam.
Thank you. So we'll see what trends are by the time we get to number 7. If things match up, then maybe we can say that the trends are there. So I think you'll hear some common themes. And what we'll talk about is playout trends. This is a presentation that we put together actually for IBC last year, and then we've updated it somewhat for where we're going. And I think you'll hear a lot of similar things as we go down the road. And part of it is talking about what transmission or what playout is. And we've already heard that there's certainly this idea of traditional linear transmission, this idea of transmitting to through an STL or transmitting to satellite. But certainly a lot of us are dealing with alternative distribution methods as well. So it's really as much about creating that content, having that content be correctly ingested, attributed, metadata attached, so that we can create, and this is a term that is not my term, but we hear it a lot in the industry, this experience, this playout experience for different customers, whether it's linear or nonlinear. So I'm going to have 2 parts of my presentation. One is really talking about trends, and then one that talks really about workflow. And first, although this is certainly the topic is play channel in a box, I'll say, and I think many others would tell you on this panel, that traditional playout, and as far as a not integrated playout, is not completely dead yet. So there are certainly a lot of people, even in this room, who use traditional systems and probably will install yet another traditional system in their career. And so at Grass Valley, we've certainly put a fair amount of effort, and I think you'll see that going forward, in trying to put together a mature environment for those traditional systems. So whether it's traditional server, traditional master control, traditional graphics, and there are reasons that a customer may be driven for that particular approach, and we think that it's still important for us as Grass Valley as a brand to continue to innovate and supply products in that case. The key reasons why these are attractive to a particular end customer is they're mature and they're very quick to deploy. What you'll find in a lot of integrated systems is there can be a little bit of uptime that's required to actually get that system up and running, and for some customers that is just not amenable for what they're trying to do. The second is, if you look today at traditional systems, they are significantly less expensive, whether that's from Grass Valley or other competitors in this traditional space. And because of where we've gotten with disk space, with network I/O, much of what you'll hear for the rest of the night, those traditional systems are significantly less expensive to implement than they were before. That said, the other trend that we do see in play out is that it's very content driven. It's content based. And more that content is not coming as a linear stream, it's coming in as a file. And it becomes very, very important very early in the process that is done correctly and that metadata is attached correctly, because that's going to be very important for what we all want to do when it actually comes down to play out. So what we find in putting together large, usually integrated systems for ingest is for a lot of broadcast entities, a lot of transmission companies, it makes more and more sense to try to centralize that, because in many cases I'm using that content over many different properties. And the more that I can only have to ingest, prep, QC that content one time and then disseminate that digitally as a file across multiple platforms, that becomes, from an operating perspective, operating expense, a very efficient way to do things. The second, in doing all those things centrally and trying to gather as much metadata as we can early in the process, it enables alternative streams other than just linear streams to be more effective. So multi-channel, on-demand channels are driven by a end user being able to search, be able to look for the particular content they look for, and that means having that metadata attached all the way at the ingest point and not duplicating effort in trying to create that. And I think you'll see a lot of companies at NAB and past where there is a lot of effort being put in that ingest mechanism and how that is done and how that metadata is captured, and trying to do that in as automated a way as possible, because what we're trying to do is limit the amount of human touches on a piece of content. And the second is, you'll see that most of the workflows that are being designed by companies such as Grass Valley and others is that ingest part of the workflow is really what's driving a lot of the rest of it. If we can do that correctly at the beginning, then the end result for you as someone who is trying to create a playout stream, whether it's linear or not, becomes much easier. So from a channel in the box, or we again as Grass Valley try to use the word integrated playout, because much has been said before, we're not sure that there is a channel specifically in a one box. But there are some certainly reasons why that trend is growing, that more and more channels are going that direction. And certainly the two that come to mind for my boss and probably your bosses too is this idea of CapEx and OpEx, right? This idea of being able to deploy additional channels, whether they be linear or not, at a great cost savings, and also being able to deploy many, many channels with one operator, two operators, as opposed to 10 or 20, and try to really maximize that, because we're not getting fewer channels in the world, we're getting more channels, but we want to try to deploy those channels with the same number of personnel as possible. The other thing that we find in implementing the systems, even though there can be a cost in developing that first, second, third, or fourth channel, that fifth, that 10th, that 40th channel becomes much quicker to deploy. And integrated solutions, and we've proven this with a lot of our installations over the last 2 or 3 years, is those incremental channel turn-ups are much faster in an integrated solution than they are in a traditional environment. And certainly as time goes on and as we ride the IT curve and as cost of CPU, as power of GPU goes up, it becomes more and more easy for us to be able to deploy these systems in channel lineups that might not have seemed to be possible 3, 4, 5 years ago, where you thought a traditional system was the only way to get that channel accomplished. We're becoming closer and closer being able to match the performance of a traditional channel with an integrated solution. And certainly in a channel-in-a-box scenario, again, talking about doing multiple channels that have similar needs, being able to roll those out and being able to do streaming channels, disaster recovery, all with the same user interfaces, because that really does help, and that kind of goes into where we'll go next with workflow. So as Grass Valley, we have several products that kind of fit within those, and we really do look at these as a complementary portfolio. For us at Grass Valley, it's not necessarily traditional versus integrated. There are cases where both of those can sit within the same system, and we think that's important because different channels have different requirements. So talking about workflow, again, asset management ingest is really where it all starts. Being able to do that in a very effective and efficient way is important. Most of these systems are typically installed across multiple sites. Most media companies are running across multiple sites today, and the more that we can leverage a single system and put it together across a WAN, be able to either do a hub and spoke, to be able to do a fully distributed system, be able to do main and backup, but across a geographic dispersion, but being able to set up that system and have a operator not care about where he is or wherever the content is, provides a much cleaner solution long term, because customers are looking to try to utilize all of the people they have in a very efficient way. The second thing is in ingest and asset management, we find, and this is where we talk about traditional versus non-traditional, there are a lot of mixed modes. We have several systems that as Grass Valley that we have deployed where ingest is traditional and playout is integrated, or ingest is very forward looking and playout is very traditional. And so it becomes important for us as manufacturers and manufacturers together to be able to interchange not just the media assets themselves, but the metadata, because the metadata is where the gold is. That's where we can actually help drive efficiencies on playout. And certainly when we're creating these tools and we're looking at a networked infrastructure, being able to provide a tool set that allows us to be able to manage users across that full enterprise in a very efficient way becomes more and more important for workflow. Again, file-based ingest is a huge portion of what we're trying to do. The more we can manage that content in a very centralized way, manage that metadata in a huge way. The big thing for us with metadata, and for you probably as well, is most of us run channels that are very similar. They may be branded a little bit differently, they may be working across similar time zones, but ultimately they're different channels. And the more that we can prep, the more that we can insert metadata, the more that we can attach information that can be used that can dynamically create graphical elements, dynamically create branding, the more efficient we can be on playout. And then my final slide, because I'm going to hold to 10 minutes. Playout solutions that can make use of that data during ingest really becomes more and more important for people who are what we call high volume operators. People who are putting out either multiple streams, VOD, and other things. It's really as much about, the CapEx thing is important, but more and more as we're trying to put out these streams, it's trying to be efficient with our operating expense. And it all, for us at Grass Valley, really we think starts with that ingest and make that ingest as efficient as possible.
Straker Caniglio is Director of Production and Playout Solutions at Harmonic, working closely with media and entertainment companies to understand their unique workflow needs and driving Harmonic's strategy for global production and playout segments. With more than 15 years in the broadcast and media industry, Straker's unique experience includes participation in the team that launched the world's first all-digital news production system, resulting in 2 Emmy Awards. Harmonic is the worldwide leader in video delivery and infrastructure for emerging television and video services. The company's production-ready innovation enables content and service providers to efficiently create, prepare, and deliver services for television and new media platforms.
Thanks, Doug. Get this. It's a Mac, you know. You have to plug it in. Come on. There we go. All right. So I'm going to talk obviously about channel in a box, but as my previous colleagues spoke about, it's rough to kind of call it channel in a box. And so integrated playout, I like that term as well, but it has IP and IP has other connotations. So I've been calling it integrated channel playout. So that's kind of a unique spin on it. But really, what I'm going to talk a little bit about is a kind of a different approach to it, which is more looking at it from a hybrid type of perspective, and I'll get into what that means in a moment. So just to define kind of what integrated channel playout, very similar to what my colleagues over here have described, you've got kind of the core elements of video playout, graphics and branding, DVE and switching, and automation, right? So those are kind of the core components that make up this kind of channel in a box or integrated channel playout type of solution. And of course, there's different ways to, I guess, package it up, right? So you can have what might be called channel in a rack. So it's not necessarily in a box, but it's an integrated solution that requires more than one server. And the advantages of this type of solution is that all of the functions are integrated. They're all, tend to be software-based. And there is an opportunity for some investment protection for existing infrastructure that you already have. They typically have automation included, and it could be self-contained automation. Or external in some cases, and again, requires multiple boxes depending on how you scale it and all the components. And of course, you've got channel in a box, which is pretty much everything above jammed into a single box. The downside, of course, is that this might require significant infrastructure change, right? Because it's a single self-contained box. In kind of comparing the two, the advantages of an integrated channel playout solution is you've got much more flexibility, better performance. You might be limited by, kind of the horsepower within a single box in terms of the level of graphics capabilities or, all of the different things that you're trying to get that platform to achieve. And as processors get faster and whatnot, I'm sure that you can jam kind of more functionality into single boxes. But the point is again, as my other colleagues here have described, is that essentially, we're going to see a lot of function collapse over time within the processing platform. Of course, the disadvantage to an integrated channel playout solution is that it's more than one box, so it's more hardware and conceivably more cost. But when you look at the advantages of what it's actually delivering in terms of performance, it may actually have a better cost advantage in the long run. The advantage of a channel in a box, of course, is they tend to be quite cheap and cheerful. So if you want to just get a single channel up and running, it's pretty straightforward. There is some perceived simplicity, but when you think about all of the things that you're trying to achieve in a master control chain, whether it be closed captioning, ES, graphics, etc., and you're kind of doing it in a single platform, that can get quite complex, whereas now you can kind of actually see the physical boxes that do each of the different tasks. So as these things begin to get collapsed into software, that doesn't mean that the complexity necessarily goes away or it gets much more simpler. It just is it's a different problem to solve when you're troubleshooting. And of course, the disadvantage, as I mentioned, limited by the hardware platform itself. So if I'm a broadcaster today and I'm looking at maybe upgrading my master control system, maybe changing out my video servers because they're getting old, or maybe my automation vendor has notified me that my automation has gone to end of life, so I have to make a decision quickly. Kind of what are my options? Well, I guess I can replace the individual components and continue down that best of breed path, or blow it all up and go with and go with a channel in a box. But I believe that there's an alternative path here, right? A bridge that can get you from that kind of nirvana of a complete integrated solution when you're starting from a best of breed type of environment. And so that's what I like to call the hybrid approach. And the hybrid approach really just says that, collapse the specific functions at your own pace, right? You've got an existing investment in some of this infrastructure, and just because, you got to change out an automation system or a video server doesn't mean I want to blow up my graphics pipeline and blow up my traffic, integration, all this kind of stuff. So the approach that the hybrid approach says that, you can start with video playout, and maybe I won't want to change out my graphics pipeline yet, but maybe I do. My switcher died, and so I need to buy a new master control switcher, which I don't want to do. So why don't I just take my video server and add that functionality within my video server? And then the next step is maybe I then want to add graphics, or well, maybe I want to start with adding graphics and not, blow up my master control switcher yet. So the idea is that you can kind of pick and choose from a menu of the different specific functions that you want to collapse, as opposed to having to do them all in one fell swoop. And the nice thing about this, obviously, is that you can do it at your own pace. You've got investment protection. You can run it as a best of breed for a period of time with the investment protection of I bought a platform that can get to a fully integrated channel playout in the future. Just by flipping on kind of software switches, if you will. Right, so how does integrated channel playout differ from channel in a box? I think, as I mentioned before, the ability to be able to just kind of flip software switches is one component, but one of the biggest component is the automation question, right? So a lot of the channel in a box or integrated channel playout solutions, they kind of come very tightly coupled with the internal automation system. There's not an easy way in a lot of cases to kind of decouple those. And so, feedback from customers that we heard is that in certain situations, the complexity of the workflow, the master control workflow, requires kind of a top quality, high level, automation system, and that some of the channel in a box type of automation systems just don't have, enough capabilities. And so we kind of took a step back and said, well, why not just let people use their existing automation systems? We have our own that we can include, but if you've got one that works for you, then keep using it. And so that's kind of the approach that we took as part of this kind of hybrid approach is, we basically can support, your own automation system, and we support all the major automation systems out there, or we have our own that we can also include. So it's really up to you. So where does integrated channel playout fit versus kind of channel in a box? I like to look at this in a couple of different dimensions. So you've got like an existing facility versus a greenfield, and a new channel versus an existing channel. Now, if it's a new channel in a greenfield site, it's a no-brainer. It's a channel in a box. You just stick it in, and away you go, right? It's very kind of cheap and cheerful and simple. But if you're launching a new channel with an existing facility, there's a good chance that you have existing workflow, existing infrastructure and whatnot that you may want to leverage. And so integrated channel playout makes more sense there. But again, it could go either way. In a greenfield site with an existing channel, you probably have existing assets, video files, graphics, et cetera, that you want to continue to leverage. Even though it's a new facility, you have, kind of knowledge and workflows and infrastructure. So integrated channel playout also is a better fit there. But again, that could go either way. If you're an existing facility with existing channels that you're migrating, it's almost a no-brainer. Integrated channel playout is going to be the best option in terms of the upfront costs as well as the ongoing costs. And then another dimension to look at is just the value of the media, right? So if I'm launching the bass fishing channel, I'm probably not going to spend as much as I'm going to, if I'm launching something like American Idol, right? So addressing the kind of value of the content to the value of the solution, I think, is also an important dimension to consider. So, integrating master control at your own pace, start simple with, again, a video server, and, when you're ready, add graphics, add switching capabilities, et cetera. And then over time, we can even create quite advanced channels using some of this technology. I'll talk about an example here that we've actually kind of put two of these channels together to create kind of a super channel, if you will. So kind of a case study of this, kind of looking at a hybrid integrated channel playout approach is something that we did with Fox Sports 1 in Los Angeles. So they were launching this kind of new little sports channel to compete with ESPN. And they wanted to create a very kind of unique look to really differentiate themselves from the competition. So what they did is they used an integrated channel playout solution. So they used video, DV, and animated graphics from Harmonic, and then they used a third-party automation system, and they augmented it with some additional graphics. They had VizRT and some graphics pipelines. Ultimately, they end up saving a lot of space and a lot of power consumption, and we're able to create quite a high-quality look. This is just a quick example of what they did. So you can see they're kind of squeezing back the video, and all the graphics underneath are run by the system, and then they can squeeze that in the corner. What's nice about that is like soccer doesn't really lend itself to having commercials, so now they can actually monetize soccer. Does anybody watch soccer? Actually, I like soccer, but That's right, football. I like football. World Cup's coming up. So anyway, this is my last slide. So the key points here is, there's not just kind of the best of breed approach or the channel in a box approach. There's kind of a middle ground, and that's what I like to call the hybrid approach. It really has the lowest operational cost. You can fit, 4 channels into a single rack unit. It's proven solution, based on existing technology. So it's not like you're, taking, an old technology and then trying to rewrite it into software. It's actually, the original source. And then reduce complexity. You understand how your master control works today, so collapse the functions at your own pace.
Our next presenter is Stephen Smith of Harris, Asset Management and Integrated Playout Solutions at Harris Broadcast. Previously, he was the Executive Director of Media Systems at Stars Entertainment. Harris Broadcast has for more than 5 decades been an innovator of market-leading media, playout, networking, and transmission technology, serving the world's most prestigious broadcasters, communications service providers, governments, and enterprises across 140 countries. From creating to delivering the moment, Harris Broadcast business management software and end-to-end audio and video solutions are enhancing the user experience, improving workflow, and generating revenue for its customers. Steve.
Thanks.
All right, I can't remember who was that was talking about the complexity. I think it was you of integrated channel playout. A very wise man once said to me that the complexity in the TV station is kind of like energy. You can't destroy it, you can only move it around. So it's kind of interesting to hear you say that. My presentation is probably going to be a little bit more of a shameless plug than what you've had so far. The main difference I think you'll see between what I'm going to say, or between my presentation and their presentations, I think if the first one was yellow, the second one was green, the third one was blue, mine's mostly going to be red. So the solution set that we have that plays in the integrated channel or channel-in-a-box space is called Versio, as you've seen from everybody else. It's automation, it's clip playback or server capabilities, and graphics and branding. I kind of lump the capability of doing DVE squeezes and such like into that graphics and branding bucket. So kind of along the lines as others said, we have a pretty rich heritage of capabilities that are coming into this product. We have the ADC and D-series automation platforms. There's close on 1,000 customers worldwide that are on these. For the clip playback, the technology we use in our environment is the technology that's in the Nexio video servers, and then all the graphics and branding in the platform come out of the Inscriber technologies. I'll spare you the rest of that. So the box, that's the red bit. So Versio, channel in a box, integrated channel playout, whatever you want to call it. There's the red box with the parts and pieces inside it. We have the automation, we have the video server playback capabilities, the graphics capabilities, storage inside there. So it is a pizza box that has automation, graphics and branding, storage, everything necessary to playback. So it is actually effectively a channel in a box, but as has previously been said, there is the asset management capabilities that go upstream of this. There's the ingest capabilities that go upstream of this. And then the ability to actually move content around through all these parts and pieces. So for many of our customers, and again, this has already been said, there's the notion that you actually already have infrastructure in place. You already have ADC automation, you have D-series automation, maybe you have somebody else's automation. And you want to leverage the capabilities here, but you also want to retain the investment you've already made in your automation platform. The exact same solution, just change where the box is drawn. And you still have an integrated playout solution. You still have a channel mostly in the box, but now still being able to leverage the capabilities that you had on the outset. Device obviously capable of taking multiple video inputs, and then on the output side, a branded output, and then either clean or simulcast if you're trying to do HD and SD at the same time. You go into a world where the amount of storage available in a pizza box isn't sufficient to sustain a channel, then the storage moves external from the device. So this could be a SAN, it could be a NAS, it could be another shameless plug, it could be the Harris-Farad system for that storage. It could be a nice long storage system. We really don't care. We're agnostic as to what that really is. And obviously you can stick the automation back inside the box, still using the same storage. I'm trying to guess what the next slide is here. I think it's the one where we go. So up to this point, a channel in a box has really just been a line drawn on a page of a Visio. And when I kind of started having this argument with engineering, my perception of how easy it was to make this next step was apparently grossly oversimplified. I figured if we stopped drawing a box and drew a wiggly line, that instantly we would have virtualized the platform, that we no longer had any dependency on hardware. We didn't need baseband in and out anymore. We could have commodity storage, and we still have all the same capabilities now, just in a piece of software that can run either in a VM, commodity piece of hardware, or actually, before I jump on the next bit, backing up, we can have talked about the video over IP. So in this model, we're using SMTPENY 22-6, so uncompressed video over IP going into and out of a virtualized instance running the Blade Center that obviously has 10 gigabit or faster connectivity. We draw another squiggly line, and now we have a cloudified solution. So we take that same software model, and now instead of deploying it inside a virtual machine or on a commodity piece of hardware in our facility, we push it out to Amazon, we push it out to Azure, we run it in an IBM data center. It doesn't really matter where, but it's no longer on-premise, it's off-premise, and we switch from using uncompressed video over IP to compressed video over IP. Take the red squiggly cloud and put it back inside the original red box, and we have best of both worlds. We have the capabilities that you have in a pure software model, so we didn't have to have the dependency on our hardware or our video I/O, but you now actually do get baseband in and out, as well as having uncompressed SMTPENY 22-6 and compressed video, or any combination thereof, to go into and out of the environment. So what we're really trying to work towards here is a model that allows you to transition from a traditional model of video servers and automation all the way through to a completely virtualized off-premise infrastructure without doing a forklift replacement. There's baby steps that can be taken all the way along to get you there. So my goal is to get the box out of the channel in the box piece, and it's the integrated channel solution versus channel in a box. So to sum that up, we went from a one rack unit pizza box integrated solution, leveraging existing automation, expanding out to the shared storage or shared storage, virtualized either on-site or off-site, baseband I/O compressed over IP, uncompressed over IP, cloud deployment, or some kind of hybrid model thereof. I'm not going to be quite this shameless. We'll skip through these. This is listing out capabilities in the graphics, playback, and automation space. But we will leap to this one. So business enablement. I mean, what are we really trying to do? So we're trying to achieve a geo-dispersed operations across a unified media platform free from the confines of physical deployment. So that's all the parts and pieces you've heard me talk about, and my colleagues ahead of me talk about in terms of media asset management, content movement, ingest, and the actual origination, all in one cohesive platform where you're not leaping between all these different platforms, that you have that capability of running on-site, off-site, somewhere in between. Your disaster recovery site doesn't have to be a physically separate facility with content moving backwards and forwards. You can use that site as more of a high availability model. So instead of having a primary and a backup channel physically on site, you have an instance of a channel on site, an instance of a channel on another site, and they're not primary and backup, they're equals. It's just whichever one happens to be the path that's currently going to eyeballs is your primary, and the other is just the high availability node. Hyper-localized and targeted content delivery with multi-screen capabilities. And again, these things have been talked about before I got up here as well. We want to be able to target advertising, target programming. We want to be able to control what the content is that you actually see at home or on your iPad or on your phone, and change that content or tailor that content to your specific demographic. So hybrid business and financial models that allow truly elastic scalability. So not just scale up, but also scale down. Stand up a new channel. Maybe you need to run a free preview channel or 5 for a weekend. You don't need those services after the weekend. Take them back down again. Don't pay for the infrastructure. Don't pay for all the effort that goes into these things. Now we get to a configuration over installation type model, click deploy, running a new channel rather than rack, stack, and wire. And then migration and support for existing platforms and existing customers. So it's not this scary leap from what we used to this completely new data center origination platform. There's steps to get you there piece by piece. You can put your toe in the water, see if you like it before you dive in. So hierarchical origination with network at the edge, also kind of following along the same model as the hyper-localized origination. So what we have here is a model where we have a network feed that's been regionalized to the state level, and then further regionalized by the city, and then finally regionalized based on the platform that you're delivering on. So maybe if we're here in New York, it would be Time Warner, and who's the other carrier here? I can't remember off the top. Yeah. So different carriers at the edge, the people that you actually pay the money to get the content from. That level, we can also change what the programming is, and moving the origination of that network all the way to that final device. 1 minute, okay. So what actually is defining network is not actually a stream of video that needs to physically leave the facility, go up, hit a satellite, go down a piece of fiber. It's just metadata describing the intent of what should happen on the network channel. And at each level, we're just refining that metadata until we eventually get to the edge. And at the very edge, we take the differences between all those components, and that's where the content is actually originated from. Obviously, with the exception of the live insertions for like news and other sports would be things that were streamed through from a central location, but ultimately being assembled at the edge. Visit us at NAB, and that's my final shameless plug.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Francois Greville, who is Market Segment Manager for Playout at Miranda Technologies. He's also held positions in product management with responsibilities over the Miranda iControl product line of monitoring and control solutions used by broadcasters and TV service providers for monitoring and control of their signals and facilities. Prior to Miranda, Francois was a broadcast project manager at CBC Radio Canada, as well as an applications engineer and product manager for Nortel and Emerson. Miranda Technologies, now a Belden brand, is one of the world's leading providers of hardware and software solutions for the television, broadcast, cable, satellite, and IPTV industries. Their solutions span the full breadth of television operations, including production, playout, and delivery to subscribers. Francois.
Let's see if this works. Yeah, okay. Good evening, everyone. So true to tradition, I suppose I've labeled this presentation, titled it Integrated Playout. So I guess there's a little consistency with what my colleagues said earlier. And the way I've divided this is to look at trends and obviously try to see how this would impact or how it does impact channel in a box or integrated playout. The trends that were mentioned, I must say, I agree with all of them. I think, you know, the fact that there are always more channels, that these channels are distributed across an ever increasing range and type of platforms and networks. The fact that you know, there's a need for this content to reach audiences you know, in different ways for things that are relevant to them. I agree to all of them, but there is one that I don't think anyone mentioned, and we've been looking at this for a little while. So does anyone recognize this?
Niagara Falls. Now, it might be frozen and there's probably lots of snow. I'm Canadian, as you probably have figured out. Anyway, so it is Niagara Falls. It borders the U.S. and Canada, Buffalo and Ontario. What you probably can't see, because the resolution's probably not terrific, there's a little dot somewhere in the middle. So there's actually someone who's crossing Niagara Falls. So there's a wire that was, I suppose, stretched between the U.S. side and the Canadian side, and there's a fellow called Nick Walenda that I think, can't remember, I checked my facts earlier, I've forgotten. Anyway, this fellow crossed Niagara Falls. So there's a wire. He's I suppose, a trapeze artist. He crossed Niagara Falls, and there's another wire which you can't see, and that wire was for a camera to follow him, because this event was carried live on TV. So I'm a broadcast engineer, and I just don't watch that much TV, but I do watch the news. I watch some sports, and on the news that night, it made national news. I think it had been covered by ABC in the U.S. Anyway, it got enough attention that some people thought that they could somehow benefit from this. So fast forward to, I think last summer, during the month of June, and if you were watching a particular channel, you might have seen these promos of the walk. So we're further south. There's a little less water and snow. It's the Grand Canyon. And again, this fellow, a heavily promoted event, one epic live event, this fellow was going to cross the Grand Canyon on a wire. So they call this event Skywire Live. It was scheduled for a Sunday, it was scheduled for a Sunday evening, so absolute prime time. So lots of coverage, obviously on the channel, lots of coverage in the social media. But what drew my attention to this, and I wasn't aware of this, I must admit, but what struck me in this is what's in the bottom corner is the logo of that channel is the Discovery Channel. So Discovery Channel, I must admit, I said I don't watch much TV. Discovery Channel is something that my kids watch. I have 3 teenagers, and they watch things like Mythbusters. They always talk about Mythbusters. Deadliest Catch, and my son and his friends, there's an event, I think in the summer, where Discovery calls it Shark Week. And it's a big thing. I hear about it over dinner, over breakfast. Shark Week is on. But effectively, all these channels, and in the way I've always perceived Discovery Channel, this is canned content. This is content that's pre-scheduled way in advance. So Skywire Live is a big departure when you think about it for a channel such as Discovery. And it turns out that something really worked out well, because on that Sunday night, Skywire Live actually beat out 60 Minutes and all these typically top-rated programs. So this is one example of a particular trend, and this is the fact that more and more broadcasters are turning to, or are effectively returning to, live broadcasting to make sure that the content that they're airing is attractive to the viewers, and that this pleases the advertisers. So in this thing, even a thematic channel like Discovery is embracing, if you want, live programming as part of their schedules. And this, I took this semi-randomly. These are the Nielsen ratings for the first week of December. And I've highlighted here, those top, out of the top 10 programs for that week, first week in December, obviously there was football, live sports, really always an attraction. But The Voice, finished on NBC, finished 7th and 8th, the Tuesday and Thursday. And another thing that is kind of peculiar, on number 4 was The Sound of Music. So broadcast by NBC. It was actually, I think, Carrie Underwood played the role of Maria Von Trapp. Anyway, it was a big thing in that it was aired live, effectively a musical live on national television. So it's definitely a trend that has caught on. And again, that is, something that I remember when I watched a lot more TV was not as prevalent as it is today. But the reality is, as I said, as we all have said, more channels, more complex distribution paths, a lot more expected out of everybody, and obviously a need or an interest in delivering complex live airing of live events, but in a context where every customers that we always meet are telling us that the budgets are restricted, right? So it's a reality that broadcasters have to live with. So we've kind of, out of that, we've spelled out internally a vision for the solutions that Miranda has to offer for multi-channel playout, for integrated playout. And that vision is to empower our customers to deliver compelling content to their audiences. So obviously, live programming is part of that, or at least in the case of a lot of channels. The second aspect of this vision is enable our customers to access advertising and other revenues through having more flexibility, right? More flexibility in how their channel in a box or integrated playout or hybrid playout can actually be configured and operated. Obviously, in the end, to ensure that the CFO meets his targets, and that the cost of ownership, the cost of short-term, medium-term, long-term ownership are actually meet the objectives of the company. So 3 key objectives. So in that sense, how do those trends, how do those effectively, those things we're trying to hit, what do they mean with respect to channel in a box? So channel in a box, as my colleagues pointed out or illustrated earlier, combination of a traditional set of functions, individual devices that get combined into one device. But out of that, we believe, obviously, that the savings, the total cost of ownership, isn't just, the aim is not just, or the gain is not just from combining it, individual pieces into a single box. It's really from what you're going to do with this integrated playout, how you're going to use it, the first day, the second day, after the first month, and over time. So the real savings are in the OpEx. And here's my plug portion. So in ITX, what we like to say, the 3 key values is obviously this ability for a platform to scale, and for the scalability to be fast and efficient. To address this aspect of live, to have with our integrated playout solution the ability to also manage live events and live programming, and obviously to make those channels look good with excellent graphics, and also to have the ability to manage the media assets. So the integrated playout, meaning that integrated media asset management is also part of the equation. So those are the things that are really kind of driving how we see our current business and our business going further.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next presenter is Playbox Technology. Mike Pecoraro is Western Regional Sales Manager for Playbox. Before joining Playbox, Mike was Applications Engineering Manager for modular interface conversion and command and control software at Leach. Previous to that, he was Market Development Manager for Digital VTRs at JVC Professional. Playbox lays claim to being the #1 international TV channel in a box manufacturer with interactive CG and graphics, MAM, traffic and news, available in SD, HD, and DVB. Playbox has innovative and scalable solutions to fit your workflow and offer you the solution you want from a single channel playout server to a multi-channel turnkey broadcast center. Mike.
Thank you very much, Doug, and thank you, SMTPENY, for inviting us. Lovely introduction, not much I can add to that. For those of you who are not familiar with Playbox, let me just say shame on you. We introduced our first product 20 years ago. It was a preparation tool for subtitles, and our first channel in a box product was launched 11 years ago. Now, there's a lot of similarities, I think, as Doug said originally, there's a lot of similarities in the CIB, and there's some differences, and some of those differences are pretty significant. One of the differences with us is we are a software company. We do not manufacture hardware. We sell you hardware, we deliver hardware. The product that you get when you open the box is in fact a complete integrated turnkey server. But what we do is we develop software. The advantage to that, and we'll talk about that in greater detail, the advantage to that is we can concentrate software development on making our system very flexible, making our workflow customer-driven. So our approach is not to say, Mr. Customer, let me tell you how you got to run your TV station. Our approach is, Mr. Customer, how do you like to run your TV station? Do you want it to be file-based? Great. Do you want ingest? Perfect. Do you want your own graphics? Fine. Do you want to use our graphics? Not a problem. You have your existing automation? Wonderful. We'll be happy to work with it. You want to use our automation? Absolutely wonderful. Part of that, a very simple, straightforward workflow is we're running Windows, and what comes with Windows is a very simple, straightforward, easy to use, easy to understand GUI. Now, as I said, we are not a hardware manufacturer. We assemble hardware from enterprise-class IT server manufacturers. This allows us a couple of things. It allows us to take the best-in-class hardware platforms that are out there, and it also reduces our time-to-market cycle very rapidly. Having worked for manufacturers that made hardware, I remember one manufacturer I worked with took several years to get their new platform to market. We typically can get a new generation of hardware to market within 3 to 4 months, sometimes weeks. Now, the channel in a box, the name channel in a box, tends to make people think of it as an island. And of course, it can be, frequently is. Well over half my customers buy a single channel. They deploy it remotely. It's at a transmitter. It's hyper-localizing for sub-channels. Works very well. Again, it's integrated with automation, with playout, with graphics, and ingest. But it doesn't have to be. It scales up. It's very elegant. Because of our architecture, individual channels scale very elegantly. You need a second channel, you buy a second channel. Very flexible deployment. Where do you want that second channel? Sitting next to it, sitting in the cable company's server room, sitting in Tierra del Fuego? It doesn't really matter. What matters is that I have control over it as if I were able to walk over and touch it, not physically where it is, just the ability to control it. Also, the advantage to this is it's distributed risk. If you put it in a data center, and that data center has a catastrophic failure, it only affects those channels that are in that data center. That first graphic is, I guess for lack of a better term, we'll call it the standard network affiliate model. Networks coming in from a satellite or IP. Again, we don't care. As long as there's an input, there has to be an input. We trigger commercials however that trigger comes in, DTMF, GPI, SCE T30, 35. Somebody hits it in the head with a hammer. Doesn't matter. Something needs to tell the server to play a commercial. Plays the commercial, goes back to live. This is exactly the same thing scaled up to 24 channels. This model has media asset management, it has traffic, It has billing, it has a compliance recording. It scales very elegantly, very easily. Now, exactly what is the CIB? We've talked a lot about the channel in a box, and I'll tell you our approach. Our approach to channel in a box is three main and distinct components. Airbox, which is the play-to-air automation with internal playout. Airbox has, in addition to its automation, it has a virtual software-based master control switcher. It has media preparation tools integrated into it. It has a quality assurance module integrated into it, all in the same channel in a box. Also, scaling, and we'll talk about the scaling. You'll see the scaling when we get to graphics. Right now, Titlebox is the graphics application layer that runs under Airbox's automation and runs in conjunction with Airbox. Now, it's designed to take RSS feeds as well as the conventional broadcast workflow, i.e. somebody from production coming in, pre-planning and pre-producing all their graphics for news, for sports, for whatever. It also takes RSS feeds. And RSS feeds can be weather streams, they can be business, sports, whatever you want, traffic updates, and also social media. And we have an application specific to social media. CaptureBox is the ingest server, and as the name suggests, it's designed to take baseband video or IP in and capture it as a file. Now, as we said, channel in a box typically is perceived as an island. Many times it's deployed as an island, and if that's all you need, then that's all you need. However, there are some applications where it needs to fit into a much larger ecosystem. And for those, we have additional modules. We have SafeBox, which moves content around the network, respecting, of course, as always, rights and privileges. Gives kill dates, all the stuff that you need to be able to manage your content effectively. A web-based command and control application called Multi-Playout Manager, which allows the network managers with various levels of permission and authorization to look at any part or the whole of the system with varying degrees of control, whether they're simply being able to monitor it or they can push programs to it, change playlists, whatever. Social media box. Broadcasters are now becoming extremely aware of the importance of social media. Putting Twitter feeds on, putting Facebook feeds on, being able to aggregate them and integrate them into Titlebox. This is done by Social Media Box. It is a moderated system, so you can put in the words that you pretty much don't want to make sure that are on there. And it can put in a delay so it can flag a feed to say, gee, Mr. Customer, you might want to look at this. Not exactly sure what the guy's saying, but it doesn't fit normal conversation, so you might want to look at it. Now, channel in a box, configurations and flavors. One of the channel in a box configurations, which is probably the most common, is AdBox. It's remote commercial insertion and graphics integration. The graphics can be as simple as coming up next. They can be as simple as a logo, or they can be as complicated as anything you want, including EAS. So for hyper-localizing channels, it allows you a very simple, effective, single RU way to do that. EdgeBox. EdgeBox, like AdBox, is designed for remote deployment. The difference between EdgeBox and AdBox is EdgeBox is designed not as commercial insertion, but as the channel origination point. We have a couple of customers that, for whatever reason, are not able to get a clean satellite signal, or they're not able to get reliable internet connection to a playout center. So this is an edge-deployed server where they FTP the content into it, and it runs essentially parallel to the network. The network, by the way, is Fox. And it runs parallel to what they're running on the network, so that the guy at home, when he's looking at what he's watching, when he's watching Fox, is seeing the same thing that everybody else in the same time zone is seeing, although it's not actually originating at Fox. One more minute? Wow. Thank you very much. I'm going to give 30 seconds of it back to you. You owe me 30 seconds for the next time I'm up here. Thank you very much, and we'll be on the panel and circulating among you. Thank you. I don't have a power supply. You're running on battery? I need one.
When Francois was showing us the picture of Niagara Falls and pointing at the spec, I thought you were going to show us channel in a barrel. And I was going to say, oh, that's new. I didn't catch that in the last report. Shooting channels in a barrel. Okay, that's for you. Yeah. Okay. Martin Holmes is Vice President of Technology at Snell. He's involved in the design, integration, and implementation of customers' digital facilities arising from the transition to file-based and IP operations. In this role, he has been involved in the successful build and launch of the world's largest digital broadcast facility, as well as many other pioneering projects. He brings a multidisciplinary engineering approach with a strong understanding and technical expertise in systems design, project management, integration, and control to large-scale systems. His areas of focus are automation of playout, master control environments, optimized broadcast workflow, and the integration of mixed SDI and IP-based operations. Snell is a world leader in broadcast technology, providing media and broadcast industry with a broad range of software and hardware-based solutions for the creation, management, and distribution of content to today's multi-screen world of tablets, televisions, mobiles, and PCs. Merged with ProBell, with over 30 years of experience in broadcast engineering and 100 awards for innovation, Snell has supported its customers from analog to digital, SD to HD, and 1080p to 3D. Martin.
Wow. Most of you know me anyway, so we won't go into that too much. I was reminded today that many years ago, in 1988, just give me a moment to get my act together here. In 1988, we did the Seoul Olympics with a company that began with a Q. And lo and behold, as of today, I now work in a company that begins with a Q, which is kind of interesting, really. It's interesting that my career may end where it started. Give me one moment to get myself organized. My PC fell over, just parked over there, so it needs a moment to get itself together. Let's see if this works. Maybe not. Oh, okay. Cool. Okay. So you've heard tonight a lot about channels in boxes, a lot about integrated devices. We've talked quite a lot about all of those features. I really don't want to talk about all that stuff all over again. I will, but I don't really want to because I'm last. So going last, I get the benefit of saying we do all that stuff because that's what we've got to do. And then I'm going to explain it to you all over again about why we do it and how we do it and how it works and so on. So I'm not anti-going last at all. So let's talk a little bit about channels in boxes and the applications of, I think the applications around channels in boxes are more than just about the box. I think it's about automation. I think it's about workflow. There's been some touching on that today. I don't want to talk about workflow at this juncture, but certainly the method of getting a file in, moving it, QCing it, and getting it to a playout server is quite important. So we've seen graphs a bit. We've seen graphics a bit like this. This is how channels condense, how channels in boxes have been arrived at, and some of the core features that have to go into a channel in a box that's going to exist in an environment that professional broadcasters may use them in. So some of the items that they have to do, these are not just things that we want them to do, that we think it's a good idea to do. These are items that if we're going to condense all of the what used to be monolithic structures into off-the-shelf server hardware, let's call it that, the stuff that customers like to buy because it's cheap. Let's be realistic about it. It's low cost, relatively low cost. So some of the items that we need to get into the box, we used to talk about, we thought outside the box and stuffed it all in. So that's one method of thinking about this kind of approach. The truth of the matter is that actually it's quite complex. We've heard some talk about it's relatively easy to spin up a VM and all that kind of stuff. It's not. It's doable, it's deployable, but it certainly isn't easy to run up a VM in a simple, fast way. You can make it work, but it's complex, it's time-consuming, and it needs thought. So typical requirements that come out of a channel in a box. We have to do all these things, right? So multi-format, HD, SD, 3G perhaps, 1080p if people want to do that. We have to be able to deal with DVEs. We have to be able to deal with audio processing. We have to be able to deal with Nielsen. We have to be able to deal with EAS if that's what our concerns are. We need to perhaps be able to control third-party devices. There was a discussion here earlier about the value of building automated systems that perhaps have legacy, traditional hardware approach, Omnion servers, harmonic servers. There's a lot of customers around the world who are not comfortable enough yet to build channel-in-a-box systems from the ground out, but they might deploy them in some form. So we can talk about some of those things, some of those applications, and the values of building them all. I'm personally very happy to build a system any which way a customer wants to do it. If he wants to build a traditionally based system that moves SDI around, then I'm happy to help him automate that and deliver the playlists with 5 or 6 nines reliability. I've just done a test. We've just done a test on 500,000 player items, and that played out with 99.9999% reliability. So it's 0.3 seconds a year. Somebody will do the mathematics. I did the mathematics in the cab on the way up here, so the mathematics might be a bit dubious, but I make that 0.3 seconds a year at 6 nines. So lots more of this stuff. So you've got to be able to do EAS. You've got to be able to do all the flavors of closed captions. You've got to be, you can't, if you're going to convert from SD to HD, let's say, you need to be able to deal with 608 captions and deliver them in the 708 space. This is just the features that we have to bring to these kinds of tools. There's a whole group of EAS tools that have to be included. We have to include Nielsen, Dolby. We have to do Dolby decode, encode. All of this stuff is important to get it done right, and it's important to deliver it in a frame-accurate, time-accurate, absolutely reliable way. And that's the function of ICE with Morpheus. Lots more features. We talked a little bit about aspect ratio conversion. We talked about V-chip. We haven't really talked much about SCTE 104 triggers. But if you want to do opt-outs, and if you want to rejoin in progress in an automated way, SCTE 104 provides some tools to enable us to do that. But you have to make your delivery mechanism capable of understanding what an SCTE 104 trigger is. So all of that stuff has to go into this, these capable boxes. And then there's lots and lots of file formats, codecs, and wrappers. Everybody's got a different idea on what they want. People want to use LXF, people want to use GXF, people want to use ASO2, ASO3. The list is never ending. So there's quite a lot to think about, and to build a content engine, an integrated content engine, we seem to be banding integrated around a lot. So an integrated content engine, that's a thing that we call an ICE. We have to be able to build a machine that can work out what files it's going to play, when it's going to play it, and that they're all going to play when they're delivered to the playout mechanism on time. So one of the things we started be working is a validation service that as a file is delivered, we're able to semi-decode it and make sure that actually the file will play out of a port when the time comes to play it. Nothing worse than not knowing that a file's going to play, not going to play. And this is a fundamental in channeling boxes. We have to also be able to support very high performance disk arrays, SANs hanging on the backs of servers. And what the SANs do, we don't make one. Maybe we do make one. We'll talk about that afterwards. But customers make, other people make SANs. Quantum, for instance, makes SANs. And they're very high performance, very high throughput. And as you start to ingest to a quantum SAN, the quantum SAN can start to play. You deliver that via fiber channel to integrated content engines, and the integrated content engines can start to play while the SAN is recording. This needs a lot of balanced throughput, and you have to get that right, otherwise it doesn't work. So that's what we've been doing for the last couple of years, is making all this stuff work. We have hundreds of channels of this stuff installed and working in very high revenue circumstances and quite low revenue circumstances. And the beauty of scaling, as we discussed, from Queen's Public Television, who are on air today with a system that runs just like this, to some of the largest broadcast customers with massive scalability. All of this stuff fits and works and comes together. We talked a bit about graphics, of course. There's got to be lots of 2D, lots of 3D graphics. The ability to take them out, use them, deploy them, squeeze them back. How about running VariPlay on a disk server? It's kind of tricky to do right. What we used to do with a VTR was run it at 1.5 times speed. Try doing that with a server. That needs a lot of engineering to make that work. You have to build in a router, of course, because so we can do graphics over, graphics under, keys, DVEs. Lots of this kind of building of traditional systems. That's what a system could look like with an ICE on the side. Multiple Morpheus systems joined together over a wide area network. Those systems are alive and well. Multi-language, multi-audio, multi-region. Channeling boxes enable all that stuff. Hubs and spokes. We have customers doing a hub and spoke device today, where the hub is the ingest center, the spokes are playing out. Business continuity. It's a perfect use of this kind of technology. Lots of customers wish to do this with remote lights out facilities. Product evolution. This is where we are today, where we're going. Certainly, the gentleman from Harris was talking about virtualized systems. Absolutely agree. Small form factors, and this is where this idea of virtualizing servers will come. So all of those servers can be spun up into VMs, and that's what a virtualized system might look like going forward.
Thank you. It would help me, I'm mindful of your time as well as their time. And it would help me if by a show of hands, how many people think they're going to have a question or a comment? We're not going to questions yet, but I'm just curious. How many? Okay, so far not that many, but okay.
But Bill's question will be good.
Yeah. So, gentlemen, there are two things that essentially could force customers to consider purchasing a new channel-in-a-box system or integrated system. One is that the system that they have is getting ragged around the edges. There are things about it that are not, it's obsoleting. There are things about it that are not expandable or scalable that gives them some thought that they will need to replace their system. The other is that it's going to wear out. I mean, things do wear out. Anything that has a mechanical component to it, you could argue anything that uses a hard drive. There are many things that on the hardware side of it certainly can go bad, and software is constantly being upgraded. So one question I would ask is, how long can customers buying a channel-in-a-box or integrated system today expect it to last? Who wants to bite on that one? I think it's a good one for Straker, for starters.
Well, since I've got the mic.
Okay.
Yeah, I like you said, I mean, the hardware is the underlying, I guess, factor that will determine how long these components last, right? The disc manufacturers are keep obsoleting the discs, so those have a kind of a shelf life that seems to be getting shorter and shorter. The individual components, but also even within the software layers. Microsoft has a new update or obsoletes one of the versions. You've got a new patch that comes out. You get new viruses, etc. So I think the cycle of upgrade doesn't necessarily get any better just because you went to a software-based or even virtualized environment. There's still at the end of the day some underlying hardware of some component.
Please, use the mic.
For those of you who are paying attention to when I was talking, we use third-party hardware, and the nature of our architecture is such that components or entire systems can be upgraded without renewing software. So the software is something that you own. Standard caveat, you never really own software because you can't decompile it. You own the license. So as hardware moves forward, your system can move forward with it. And of course, we'd be happy to sell you new hardware, but you don't have to buy it from us. You can put your own system together should you choose to do that.
Martin,
Chairman,
yes.
I was going to say, my position on this is integrated channel playout, or channel in a box, is I like to call it, it's a gateway drug. You take your integrated channel playout into the rack room with a friend, hide out in the back, you try it, next thing you know, your data center origination, cloud origination, everything's in a software world. I mean, I desperately want to get out of the business of selling hardware. I'd far rather you choose your own hardware. You probably have corporate agreements to buy from Dell or Hewlett-Packard, or whoever it is that you use internally. And you can probably buy the equipment a lot more cost-effectively than you can for us. But as my friend said here, it's a software solution. The software moves forward. It's the software that has the value. That's where the IP is. That's what you depend on day in, day out. That's what your operators are used to seeing. As long as that piece keeps going forward, you're in a good position.
As he said, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, my comment, without wanting to sound smug, it's not just a fact of whether the channel of a box has call it a lifetime. It's also based on whether how the business evolves, how the broadcast expects to run this channel over time, and that will have more impact. The environment in which this is used will have more impact on whether the channel in a box system lasts long or not as long. But with some of my colleagues, I would say the fact that there is a substantial portion of software in there, I would say, means that it can be stretched, adapted, evolved more easily than what we all know as purely traditional playout.
Down to Martin. Yes.
Do you want to?
I mean, we've got to bear in mind that this technology is in use providing broadcast playout in professional facilities. It isn't going off to do an update for viruses. It's locked out. It just doesn't happen like that. And actually, when it becomes obsolete, you run it on a VM, you run the software up on a VM, and you migrate your one VM to your other VM. And then you get your broadcast infrastructure is released from the hardware. In my belief, this is relatively straightforward and quite well understood and quite well executed by companies who are running automated VM deployment tools, Puppet and the likes. The tools are out there if you find them.
Okay. Shifting to a new subject, and it's been in some of these presentations, has been a reference to the more nonlinear kind of programming. So the broadcast industry and even a lot of cable is very linear. Programs are on at a specific time. Aside from the idea of time shifting, when you look at something like BBC Three being made into a nonlinear service, and more things that are being deployed are by their nature nonlinear, how do you think that's going to impact the sale and implementation of channel-in-a-box systems? Well, I would pass it to someone else, I think, maybe.
You got the talking stick, go right ahead.
Okay.
So clearly, channels in boxes can do many things and more things than just play out SDI, though playing out SDI is one of the things we do with them. I'm working with a customer currently, not a million miles away from here, who is going to do H.264 in, H.264 out, and they're going to virtualize that. but that's going to be for what we might call linear playout, in as much as it's playing out linearly. But as soon as they deliver that to another catch server, then that catch server can deliver it in any which way it sees. Their immediate requirement is to do H.264 in a linear fashion, what I call frame-accurate fashion. But once you deliver it to something else, you deliver it to a web service, then customers can do anything they like with it. And I suspect, with a different commercial load, there will be a future in delivering content 3 days later with a different commercial load, opting out from a live event to do different commercials. You could do all that kind of stuff. I could see that.
Right. Someone else on that subject?
Well, so my take on that is it's not just the repurposing of the signal for different distribution models. It's also making sure that the content is appropriate for those other distribution models. And that's a big challenge because content, or say a pharmaceutical ad that carries in the U.S., it carries the very, very small the disclaimers. Obviously, that wouldn't be suitable to be shown on my phone. So there's a lot of challenges in not just getting the signal out there and repurposing it from a format perspective. The big challenge is how do you deal with the fact that this content can be aired on the linear channel. It might on one non-linear channel. It might be good for VOD. It might not be good for over-the-top. And it all boils down to, I think someone mentioned, getting the data, the metadata, and handling this properly, because that's the key to then facilitating how this content is then distributed.
So I think I'm 36 now, and I do not watch linear TV. I'll record it and watch it after the fact, but I will not sit there and watch it in real time. I can't be bothered to sit there and wait for it to come on, and when it does come on, I want to leap through it if I'm bored with it. I'm sure your kids are probably the same way, and if you're growing up, maybe your kids' are probably the same way. I believe it's going to come very quickly that we'll see linear TV moving the same kind of directions we're seeing with like iHeartRadio, Pandora, where it is a near linear experience. It's not I'm going through and picking content, it's presenting content to me that the recommendation engine believes will be of interest to me. So I have that linear experience, but it's tailored specifically to who I am. It's going to show me content that I'm going to be interested in. It's going to show me advertising that's targeted to my specific demographic. And I think we're going to start seeing those, I say, as early as 12 months out, but becoming more and more prolific moving forward over the next few years.
I guess I'll just add to that, really channel in a box is linear playout. I mean, that's essentially what it is, right? If you're doing non-linear playout, you're going to have an origin server, you're going to have a completely different infrastructure. So unless you're really looking at replicating that live linear experience, in a multi-screen platform, it's probably going to be less relevant for that environment going forward. I mean, that's kind of my take.
Okay. Should manufacturers consider collaborating on a channel-in-a-box standard?
Yeah.
Well,
what do you mean by standard?
It might actually need to be a number of standards within channel-in-a-box.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Bill Miller. And among other things, I've been heavily involved with SMPTE standards activities over the past 20, 25 years. About 1997, we looked at this problem and we set up a task force to study the exchange of program material as bit streams. And that's where the initial impetus for the work on MXF came from. Dan's grinning because we worked on that together. That is where a lot of basically the structure of the current SMPTE technology committees started from that work back in 1997 to 1998, and it continues. So when you suggest that do we need a set of standards, let me see. We've got multiple device control over IP. We have sending MPEG over IP, and just basically wrappers to put just about anything over IP. And then we've taken, AMWA has taken MXF, and they've run with it. So we've got ASO2 and ASO3. And for commercials, you've now got the AS12 shim that holds a digital slate. So I think with BXF for all the automation and things like that, which is really one of the huge success stories, we don't hear all that much about it really, but the fact is that every automation manufacturer now supports BXF. I assume that none of you guys could sell a product if it didn't support BXF at this point. So I would say that we're probably in pretty good shape as far as SMTE driving the ball on getting the standards out. The question is, where are the holes in your implementation? Some of you guys have representatives on the SMTE standards committees. Some of you do not. But I mean, my question to you was going to be, where do you see the missing pieces? I don't know whether any of you have had a chance to look at AXF yet. It's really not out there, but there's been a lot of noise about it. Because although it's called archive exchange format, it's clearly usable for a lot more stuff than just archives.
Well, you can even do hitless.
Use the mic, please.
Use the mic, please, Martin.
22, stroke 6 and stroke 7.
Yeah.
So the need to standardize the product, I don't think is required. We have enough I/O. We can even deliver a stream now and frame sync it in the IP domain.
Right. Well, the
There's
whole
a great demonstration recently that Fox did.
Right.
And it worked.
The whole point of the standards is you standardize the points where information is interchanged from one box to another, and then that frees you to innovate in the pieces that go inside the box so that everybody plays with everybody else. I mean, it really, just as back in the old days, we had these analog cables that plugged together, and, you know, it was a coax and it had NTSC on it, and as long as you had a BNC and you moved the stuff 1 volt, 75 ohms, everything worked perfectly.
Unless it was PAL.
Unless it was PAL. We won't talk about that, but at least in this country we had reasonable control. But the point is, yes, we all recognize that we need to move a lot more than essence now. We need to move all that metadata. But we have the standards to do that, and I was just wondering if anybody saw there were any gaping holes that I can take back and say, hey guys, we need something. Anybody see any gaping holes?
I guess you can do that after class if you.
Yeah, well,
can't
Fred
think
wants
of
to
it
talk to me
now,
about it.
You know, ultra high definition. Other than purely bandwidth, other than issues of pumping up the bandwidth or, let's say, more storage space, do you anticipate any special needs to make ultra high definition successful through these systems?
I've got the mic, so I'll go first. Absolutely. Running UHD1 off a server made by take your pick is not very practical today in the real world. However, 60 frames a second probably isn't enough. Enhanced dynamic range has to come. When we get to 120 frames a second UHD1, I think we'll have a go at playing it out of servers. Absolutely, I do. We'll need a standard to get it out of the back of the box, carry it on 40 gig E. It'll work.
Yeah.
I'm already working on it. I think we'll make it work. I'm confident we'll make it work.
I think that's where this whole push towards 10 gig E and 100 gig E is really going to come.
Use the mic, please. Yeah.
Yep. If you look at the bandwidth requirements, the connectivity requirements, the control requirements to do UHD over a viable infrastructure, I think we're going to find it very hard pressed for somebody to put in a baseband 4K UHD router. It's going to be an IP-based router. IP in, IP out of the server with a very powerful IP-based switch in there to be able to handle that in a very efficient way.
Use the mic.
You could make an island. You was just saying you could make an island out of it, but it's a very complex island. It'll work short term, but if you look where you want to go in terms of the scalability, I think you've got to look at an IP infrastructure to handle that efficiently.
Let's go now to take questions or comments from the audience. Remember, go to the mic if you can get there, or someone pass the mic. Tell us who you are, and then address your question.
My name's Fred Huffman. I'm Huffman Technical Services. I just want to build a little bit on some of the comments Bill was making. First of all, the notion that manufacturers should collaborate in my view, should be driven by customers. And the way you do this is to put it in your procurement that says it must comply with SMPTE, blah, 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 blah. And if there's not a standard to do that, then you get into SMPTE and say, this is what we need to do to make all this stuff work. And I'd like to jump from that to the subject of the Joint Task Force on Network Media. How many of you guys are participating in that and submitted an response to the RFT? This is an important initiative that SMPTE has started within the last year. It's a joint initiative, much like the one Bill mentioned from 97 and 98, that involves the Video Services Forum, the EBU, and SMPTE. So I would encourage all of you to read about that and then start to get interested in the stuff they're talking about, the 10, 40, 100 gig and 400 gig Ethernet, and the next level of standard that's being discussed in the IEEE is terabit Ethernet. And it's going to be Ethernet, Ethernet, Ethernet. You can forget all this other stuff. And the last thing I'll say is for anybody to do transmission of video over IP, which is at layer 3 or layer 4 if you're doing file transfers, you got to go through layer 1 and layer 2. And don't forget Ethernet. You're going to have to learn about Ethernet. And I'm happy to help people with that. Thank
Okay.
you for your good stuff, by the way.
Yeah, I guess to a degree, I know we wrestle with this on a regular basis. We want to actually standardize and use the things that most people want to use, whether it be MXF, whether it be BXF, or whatever else it is. Quite often, we're pulled back from not using some of those just because there's legacy things out there. I've got to support LXF, I've got to support GXF, and I've got a hybrid infrastructure, and that's just not going to go away. So I think, well, at least speaking from our perspective, we want to move more towards standards, and as much as we can work with our customers to do that, we'll do it. I think to a degree, there's legacy things that slow us down from doing that quite often, so we have to transcode. We don't want to let the wild, wild west of file formats into the playout server. There's got to be a master file format, and I think most people actually go down that road to a certain degree. I think if we can work together, including the audience, and moving in that direction, that's a smart thing.
Matt?
Just a quick question. Are all you gentlemen, all your companies going to be at NAB? Hmm? If you're not dead, you mean?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
If I might, on the subject of IP connectivity and networks, just to plug here, a couple of plugs. The first one is for SMPTE. I don't know how many of you are aware of it, but SMPTE does run CCNA training these days. If you go take a look, you can find it on the website. You can sign up for the classes, and they're actual real CCNA classes. But the other thing that you should be aware of, and I'll change hats right now because I happen to be on the administrative committee of the IEEE Broadcast Technology Society. Broadcast Technology Society offers a training program periodically around the country called Bridging the Gap, which bridges the gap between broadcast technology and IT technology. And it's another thing that you might want to look into. Every so often we bring the road show into town, or if you have a company and you've got a bunch of engineers you want to train, you can arrange to bring a class to an instructor to your location. Just end of plug.
Yep, I think so.
I just wanted to know if any of these automated systems enable when a station goes live to update the electronic program guide when they have to shove their programming off by a half hour or hour, or is that a SMPTE thing?
It's not a SMPTE thing, that's an ATSC. Well, updating the program guide is a SMPTE thing. Getting it on the air is an ATSC thing. Getting it from what the station puts on the air into the program guide that you get over the cable system is up to the cable system. That's usually where it falls down.
Anybody on our panel want to touch that one or no?
Anybody having time warm up?
No, okay.
So I'll put one plug. It all starts on that content, having the data somewhere upstream, or the playlist at least knowing what that content is, and then being able to push that out. But unfortunately, for most of us at this table, where our line drops is where we hand it off the first point. And And that's the difficulty, is we're not in control normally all the way into the end chain, where most of us are an originating system. We may not be all the way out to the distributed system. So I don't know if anybody else wants to comment on that, but that's the biggest issue for most of us is we know that first pass off was good. It's what happened to the second, the third, the fourth pass off as the content either gets transcoded either, in real time, goes through some other conversion process, goes to, from ATC to CQuam.
I'm hearing it's a staffing function.
It's a demarcation. It's a distribution function. So who's the ultimate distributor, and are they picking up their part of that translation?
I'd like to thank the members of our panel. I'd like to thank CBS, Lisa, Tim, and I now turn it over to Ray to conclude. Stay with us for a photograph, please.
First of all, thank you for coming. For those of you who may not have known, when I walked in here this morning, they told me there was this big merger. I thought it was Joseph A. Banks and Men's Warehouse. I found out later on it was Quantel and Snell Wilcox. But I get this horrible feeling that maybe next year if we do this, there'll be two people sitting here. I don't know. So,
Be the company.
all right, please go to our website at SMTPENY.org to be up to date on our upcoming meetings. Please register. Some of the facilities we use do require us to register ahead of time. Some facilities you can come that day and get in, and some of them, if you don't register 2 or 3 days ahead of time, you cannot get in. HBO is one of those. So for those of you planning to come to the NAB wrap-up, I don't want 300 emails from people saying, please, can you get me in? So I'm warning you now. I'd like to thank everybody again for coming. I don't, Lisa, when are you throwing this out? All right. Well, Lisa's going to allow us to hang around a little longer if you have questions. Excuse me?